Hey, good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast with me out here. It's a great sunny day again on the East Coast, which I love. Hey, I wanted to say thank you. First off, thank you to the folks who are getting here early, getting here on time, and then engaging in the comments, because that stuff I really appreciate it. It helps other people begin to see that that's a community in the chat that they can engage in when they come. So I thank you for doing that. And then also, I really appreciate the fact that you register if you're registering to attend, because it lets us both have a visibility to who's attending, but it also pushes it out further. And then the second thing, which is hugely valuable to us, is I really appreciate your engagement, right? So putting comments or likes, most importantly, comments, engaging throughout the training that I do each day. Today, I'm going to do more of the training and more of the shout outs for you, or call to action, asking you to put something in the chat that lets me know you're following. So I just want to say thank you at the start. I really appreciate that. It makes the training good. It makes it fun for me to keep coming back. For those of you, if this is your first time, I've been doing this over 120 times, maybe 125 times this week. And that's a big deal, 125 times in a row, to come back with this level of energy. And the people who are engaging the community really make it fun for me, both now, right? And when I prep for tomorrow's, but also afterwards, when I get in and I see the engagement, I see those of you making connections. So fantastic job there. Let's go ahead and get started here. No matter how, and actually, whoops, before I do, let me turn this scroll bar off. Okay, there's my website at the bottom, by the way. If you're looking for any of those directories, small business directory, 8A Star Street directory, portal directory, the forecast directory, we put these directories out on the chamber for free. So write that address, govconchamber.com, down and go check it out later. Okay, so let's get started. No matter how good you are at sales, knocking on doors or making cold calls, at some point you're going to find that buyers aren't returning your phone calls. And in this training, I'll help you understand that. I'll help you understand why buyers aren't calling you back, and then also what steps you might be able to take to start getting more of them to call you back. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Live sales training for the federal space, where I provide process and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. While I do post to other platforms, LinkedIn is the only social media platform for professionals to network with each other. And that's why I do my LinkedIn Lives here. So I encourage you to connect with each other and let each other know that you're open to connections. There's a reason I tell you to put information in the chat. It's not just for me, but it's if I can get two of you to connect and perhaps form a team later, that's beneficial to you. And I love being able to provide that. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. Since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. And a process is the path from A to Z. When we follow the process, we achieve predictable results. And that's what we're looking for. I continue to work one-on-one with companies to prove out the process I teach you. But really, I'm just in this zone of trying to help you understand the process. And today I'm going to go diving into a couple of the graphics I have that can drive home the 7-step process and some other things I want you to understand. But before we get to that, do me a favor. In the chat, put your company name, put your core competency, 2 or 3 words, and help buyers, help me, help the people in the community remember who you are. It takes a while for us to get to know who you are. Sometimes it takes 20, 30, 60 times before it begins to sink in. And so don't ever get tired of it. Every day when you come in to my training or anybody else's training, put in your company name and your core competencies so people can tie your name, your company, and your core competencies together. And when the time's right, they'll come back. So don't ever feel like you've done it enough. And then again, as we go through the training today, do me a favor and engage with me and give me feedback throughout to let me know I'm being clear and that you understand the message I'm trying to communicate. I am going to share, I was saying I'm going to share my screen. And so this will be a fun little exercise. Okay. Okay, let me try that and make sure it's coming across, and I think it is. But so this is the 7-step process for federal revenue success. And I share it often when I do trainings, but I want to share it in particular today because today's topic is about why aren't federal buyers calling me back? What can I do to get them to call me back? And when you look at the 7-step process, for those of you, if this is your first time, let me just explain it in reverse. If you want a sale, bottom right of the circle, if you want a sale, you need to write proposals. None of this is a secret, right? It's just a process defined. In order to have sales, you must write proposals. In order to write good proposals, winning proposals, you must have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline. In order to have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you must have relationships, right? That's not today's training because that stuff's good to go once you get people taking your call back. But if somebody's not calling you back, these first 3 steps in the process are the ones I want to talk about today. Visibility, targeting, and outreach, what we call VTO. When you look at the reasons why people aren't calling you back, maybe it's because you don't look good to them. Either you're not findable or you're not attractive. And when I say not attractive, I mean whatever you're communicating in your website and DSBS on LinkedIn, et cetera, whatever you're communicating isn't clickable. It doesn't make me, I'm not attracted to that profile, that person, that company to click and go forward. Maybe it's you're targeting the wrong people, right? Targeting is about picking the right agency, the right people. So we can talk about that in a minute. Or maybe the quality of your outreach could use some help, right? Maybe if you tweak that process. What I like to say is I'm positive that you are good at your job. Maybe we got a problem with the process. If we improve the process, you'll have success that you're looking for. So that was one thing I wanted you to keep in mind is the 7-step process as I move into today's training. And then the second thing I really want you to understand is the bell curve. And so this is what I call the engagement bell curve. I borrowed this from the technology adoption bell curve, but basically it's the same bell curve across the board. And let me walk you through and explain what it is. And when I explain it, I'm going to first use the iPhone as an example, since at least everybody has heard of the iPhone. Whether you like the iPhone or not, you've heard of it. And so if you start from the left side of the bell curve, innovators, 2.5% of the people. So imagine 2 people out of 100. Innovators are the people who will sleep in a tent the night before the iPhone is released so that they can get the very first one at the store, right? They're sleeping in a tent to get that iPhone. They're absolute buyers. They're going to buy. Early adopters are also going to buy. This is 13.5%. And so these people are 13 out of 100 people are going to buy it. The difference between them and innovators is that these ones want their coffee and they'll show up on Monday morning at a reasonable time, but they know they're going to buy the new iPhone. So both of these groups are going to buy the iPhone. The next group, early majority, 34% of these people want the iPhone. They like it. They use it. But they're really not going to go after it until they see what happens with the innovators and early adopters when they get it. Is there an antenna problem? Is there a bug in the software that Apple didn't catch? Whatever it is, these people are going to buy. They just want proof, kind of social proof from the early adopters and innovators that this new iPhone version is a good version. You can imagine it with yourself. These early majority people want past performance. They want to see other teammates and agencies buy from you before they buy. And so what you look for are the early adopters and innovators. The left-hand side of the bell curve are your buyers. The right-hand side are not your buyers. And when I say not, I use it loosely with late majority, but solidly with laggards. So late majority, these are people who are not going to buy what you sell, the iPhone. They're not going to buy it until their contract is renegotiated with AT&T or Verizon or whoever, right? So when that happens, they have the opportunity maybe to get an iPhone at discount or spread across 36 months or whatever. That's when late majority will do it. They're only going to buy the iPhone because they have a change in their subscription with their phone carrier. The laggards are never going to buy an iPhone. So I'm a laggard on an iPhone. I have an iPhone 12 right now, but last year, all the way up until last year, I had a 5S. So I was on 5 when 12 was out. And it's because I liked it. I'm not moving. I'm not changing unless you force me to change. And so these laggards are people who have to be forced to that mode. My point about this, most importantly, is that your buyers are on the left-hand side. And often we find ourselves getting caught up on the right-hand side. And you don't need to focus on half the people. So if you reach out to 100 people, bringing this back to today's training, which is why aren't people calling me back? If you're reaching out to 100 people And then you've got to expect at least 50 are going to not buy from you. If you're not reaching out to 100 people, let's say you're reaching out to 50, well, maybe the 50 you've got so far are the laggards and the late majority, if this is making sense. So one last thing I want to share with you before I move back into just talking is when you think about the bell curve, another way I like talking about it is that some will, some won't, so what? It's a sales mantra that I've used since the 80s when I was selling vacuum cleaners door to door, that some people will open the door, some won't. Some people will buy a vacuum cleaner, some won't. Who cares? You know that some people won't, and you know that some people will. And our job is to try to get better at finding the won'ts and pushing them aside and moving to the wills, right? None of it's bad blood. It's just recognizing that some of those people are no's and some of those people are yeses. Think about a gold mine, if you will. In a gold mine, you need dirt and you need gold. You can't blame the dirt for being there with the gold. They both exist. You just need to remove the dirt and say hello to the gold. Hopefully that made sense the way I'm sharing it. Actually, if it did make sense, do me a favor and in the chat, put bell curve into the chat. Let me know you're tracking on that. Let me just get myself back to my slides that can guide the rest of what I'm doing. The bell curve is one of my favorite things. That whole idea of some will, some won't. It begins to make you realize that whatever's happening out there is not personal. Especially in sales, it's not personal. I got a guy actually who wrote me this morning about this event, a nasty remark. And I'm like, what are you doing? You could have just like unsubscribed me or something, but I could let that eat at me and really focus on it. Or I could just go, you know what? Some will, some won't. So what, right? I unsubscribed him. I unsubscribed him for him, if that makes sense. And I unconnected with him on LinkedIn. I said, look, if you're going to write that kind of a remark, you don't want me in your life and I don't want you in my life. And it doesn't mean either one of us are bad. It just means he's a laggard as it relates to me. He doesn't want to have anything to do with me. He is not a bad person. His comment could have been sweeter or nicer, right? But he's not a bad person. He's just a laggard as it relates to me. And it's important for you to understand that with the bell curve, that some will, some won't, because you'll begin to take this in a lot more stride. And then you'll be able to focus on the process of why aren't we getting calls back. So hold on one second. Let me just got to get control of my mouse again. Okay, so let's talk about buyers and from their perspective. Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. I highly recommend this book. It's one of the books I read every single year. It's 20, maybe even 30 years old now. But the 7 habits in there are perfect and really applicable to us today. And it was applicable to me in my life back then. But one of the habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? So for our customers, we want to seek first to understand what's going on with them before we ever worry about trying to get them to understand our life. Hey, I need to make this sale. Hey, I need to get in. Hey, I need to find out about that opportunity because I got to update the pipeline. Whatever, that's us. And I get it. I get that you need that. But we need to first understand where they're coming from. And I'd like you to think about 7 reasons I wrote down for what they might be thinking when you think, oh, they're not getting back to me. You know, in your mind, all these reasons go through your head about why. But let's think about some of the reasons that actually happen. And most importantly, think about it from your own perspective. How would you react if somebody reached out to you via email cold or pretty cold, or they called and left a voicemail, cold calling type thing? How would you react to that person? So think about these reasons I'm going to give you, no particular order. But the first thing you might say is, well, I don't know this person. Why would I call them back? And then maybe I'll go look for them on the internet or on LinkedIn. And this is what I meant about visibility, that first step in the 7-step process. If you're reaching out to somebody, you need to make sure you look good to them. And looking good is relative, right? If you're trying to reach out to be a data company and have a conversation with a chief data officer, when they come back and look at your website or your profile, you need to kind of scream data. We're the subject matter experts. So my first thing might be, I don't know this person. Second one is you're just catching me at a bad time. And, have you been there? Think about this, right? Don't put it in the chat necessarily, but more in your own head. Do you get people calling you where you're like, it's just a bad time? My favorite, though, is when I call and say, am I catching you at a bad time? And they say, yes. And then they say, what's this about? I'm like, come on, take control of your day. But sometimes we do catch them at a bad time. It has nothing to do with you or me. It has to do with they're just under the gun, right? Number 3, they're a late adopter or a laggard. I'm calling in to saying, hey, I want to sell you my LinkedIn course. It's like, no, I don't need a LinkedIn course. Okay, cool. Let me move out. You were laggard or late adopter. That is not a bad position to be in because, like I said, we're all laggards or late adopters on certain things. And for these people, if I'm trying to sell them a LinkedIn course, you're trying to sell them data analytics, whatever it is, they just might be a late adopter or a laggard. The fourth reason, I don't know if you're real, right? So sometimes you call people and they don't know if you're real. That's why I say on your LinkedIn profile, make sure that picture is showing and make sure you begin to build connections. So when somebody comes and looks at your LinkedIn profile, one of my favorite ways of measuring whether we're real, whether we're in the same space is if you reach out to somebody and they look at you on LinkedIn, if they see that there's 5 or 10 connections that you both have in common, that's a good thing. I've reached out to people to try to connect and we've had 800 connections in common. And so as you continue to play in the same space, you can begin to make it easier to demonstrate you're real. But keep in mind that these people don't know you that you reached out to. Maybe they don't trust you. And it's not you they don't trust. They just don't trust the unknown or if you're real. Okay, number five, you call them and they're just too busy, right? I'm too busy to talk. I'm too busy to call you back. I got the voicemail, yeah, but I'm too busy to get back. You can totally relate with contracting officers right now. The end of the fiscal year, their heads down on trying to push contracts out for their agency. And so they're just too busy. That's normal. Have you ever gotten an email or a voicemail that you said, oh, I got to follow back up? It could be a friend. It could be a colleague or a professional colleague, professional friend, whatever. But somebody reaching out that you actually wanted to get back to them. But then life just kind of went on. So, because you're too busy, you're like, I'll get back. The next one is they're out on vacation or they're sick, right? Somebody's out on maternity leave, or maybe they're sick with the flu for a week. Maybe they're actually on vacation for 2 weeks in Mexico and having fun. It's not about you, right? It's sometimes they're just not there. They're not getting back to you. They're not avoiding getting back to you for any particular reason. And then what happens is this last reason is they just forget you emailed or called because your email gets buried. I have no problem following up every 2 days with somebody because I know that it's going down. It's their responsibility to tell me, Neil, I don't want to talk to you, right? But if that's a contract officer or a program office that I'm trying to reach into, I'm not letting their lack of following back up with me stop me from continuing to pursue them, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, oh my God, I'm so happy you continued following up because I've been really busy, but I wanted to talk with you. I got no problem talking with you and doing an intro call or whatever. So when you think about the buyers and they're not getting back to you, think about yourself on why you might not be responding to unknown callers. And it helps you seek first to understand and then to be understood. So if you understand what I'm saying there, put seek to understand in the chat. Let me know that you understand that it's better to seek to understand than to be understood. So seek to understand. But I do want to drive to how do you get them to respond? So let's kind of dive into that. There's a line out there that people buy from those they know, like, and trust. I firmly believe in that line. I've done training in the past where I say in the federal space, they don't actually buy from people they know, like, and trust. They talk to people they know, like, and trust. And if you're in this call today, it's probably because you're in the federal government contracting space, in the federal market, and you're in some level of sales, business development, capture, maybe even proposal, right? Some level of dealing with the customer. And in the federal space, people don't buy from us because they know, like, and trust us. They talk to us during business development. They talk to us during capture because they know, like, and trust us. But it's kind of the same thing. And so I'm going to come back to you and talk to you about that. But if you understand know, like, and trust, and you believe in that already, put KLT into the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to convince you as I go down. So let's talk about 6 ways that you can get somebody to know you. And I do a lot of training on this. And so I'm just coming at this from a different angle. If you'd like to see more ways of how you can warm up a customer, check out the additional training I have. It's just free replays out there. So I want you to be able to learn the process of success in federal government. So here are ways that you can get the customer to know you, right? One is DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool. This is an SBA tool. It is my most important tool to communicate to you because it is the foundation to everything else that you do in federal government contracting. but it's also a way for people to know you. If the customer is doing market research, or if you call a small business professional or contracting officer and you want to set up an intro meeting or whatever, they might go into SAM and DSBS to see who you are. And if your profile's empty, then they're not going to be able to really know you. So go in there and get your profile filled out. Another way similar to this is the supplier portals. Not just large prime contractors have the supplier portals, but also agencies like HHS has its own supplier portal. So being in there and filling that profile for yourself and your company out completely will help them know you. Same kind of scenario. If you're calling them and they won't call you back, imagine if you're calling them and they look in there and you're not there, or you look in there and you got just your company name or something. Make it look like you want to work with the people you're reaching out to. So going back to targeting, if you're targeting HHS as an example, then you should be in their supplier portal before you ever do outreach. And you should make sure your profile looks good, because you know the process is for them to look in and see a little bit about you. We all want to do our due diligence on who is this person before I follow back up. Another way to get them to know you is through introductions. Hard word. Anyways, just getting introductions from somebody. That's a great way. I talked in a previous training about there's 20 different ways you can come at somebody. If you're not able to get to them on one path, there's 20 other paths, but one of my favorite is introductions. And so you might find them on LinkedIn, and I can see Sally is connected with Tom and say, hey, Tom, would you mind introducing me to Sally? A quick little LinkedIn message back and forth, and instantly it's warmed up. Instantly I go to the top of Sally's messages, and more often than not, she'll go, oh my God, I've been wanting to get back to you. So great. So don't think that these people don't want to follow back up with you. They are just not following back up. Just because they're not following back up doesn't mean they don't want to. It just means they're distracted, they're doing stuff. So your website's another great place. Your LinkedIn profile, that's where people go to validate, similar to DSBS. And so if you're reaching out to somebody, they might look in and go, who is this person? And I'm going to pick up the speed on this because I got 2 other major bullets with some tips, and I want to make sure I get them done in the next few minutes. But your LinkedIn profile is a big one. But LinkedIn engagement is another great way to get somebody to know you. The deputy CIO of the Navy just put out a post this morning, and I jumped in there pretty fast, sharing that post out through commenting. I didn't actually share it. I don't like sharing. And the reason I don't like sharing is because it's not as good for engagement. But anyways, LinkedIn engagement to me is thumbs up or comment or relative comment. So I got in there and I put a comment. And the whole reason I did it was to try to spread that person's awareness out to my network, but also, just get on his radar as he's visible or I'm visible to him, because I would like to interview him on a daily live that I do with you. And so if I am in there and I'm helping him, I'm engaging, it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, would you come in and be a guest on one of my daily lives? So all the IT vendors who are in these daily sales trainings can hear it direct from the horse's mouth. Okay, so if you understand that in order to get people to know you better, you have to be visible. You have to do the things to make yourself visible. Put visibility into the chat. While you're doing that, we talked about know, like, and trust. So let me move on to like. And this one's a pretty simple one for me. I believe people will like you more when they trust you. So there's a line that says people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And through the activities that you do, they can see that you care. So an example is, if you're engaging with somebody's content, like I mentioned before, that's something that shows them that I care. If you've taken the time to do your homework, when you send an intro email, like I said, are you doing outreach correctly? When you send an intro email, are you saying something that helps them see that you're caring about them first? I watched you on this podcast or listened to you on this podcast. I read your strategic document. Things like that make somebody like you. So in order for them to like you, you need to demonstrate that you care. And if you understand the message I'm trying to put there, put I care into the chat. And let me move on to trust, because this is a big one, right? Getting them to know you is just you're on the radar, blip, 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 I see you. But trust is a whole nother level of being able to open the door to get people to call you back, to have more conversations. And so I want to go through 4 tips for you on how you can get people to trust you that you could start doing today. The first thing, and this goes all the way back to the beginning of today's training, when at the start I said, put in your company name and your core competency. You must have one core competency so people begin to see you as the subject matter expert and the trusted advisor they need. If your space is AWS, Amazon Web Services, the cloud, if that's your space and you have that one core competency, everything you do after this will begin to just keep reinforcing that. And they will trust you because they trust what you're sharing. If you share top 10 tips to pay attention to when you're migrating to the cloud and they like it, they use it. If you share these different pieces of information they would value, then they're building a relationship of trust with you without ever having met you. And so you do this on social media, whether it's your website, LinkedIn, et cetera. So that was one. Number two is back office maturity. This is a level of trust. On your website, if somebody comes in and sees that you're CMMI level 3, or you got ISO certifications, a facility clearance, these kind of things. And by the way, if you're not making money, you shouldn't even worry about those. You should be trying to subcontract under a small business, separate training. But if you're at the stage where you're knocking on an agency's door, then you should have a back office level of maturity that tells them you are procurement ready. This is a level of trust that helps them see the risk factor going down. If I work with this company, it's not going to be that risky. If I talk to them, there's a likelihood that they actually could help me with my mission, right? Part of the risk is I'm wasting my time. And so you want to show them it's not. Number three is past performance. And this goes back to what I just said about when you're knocking on agency doors, you want to have past performance. But the part I wanted to say here, remember that you need to have a core competency. Often I see small businesses have, let's say, 10 past performances, but they're spread across multiple competencies. Areas of expertise, and that does not build confidence to somebody that you're the subject matter expert in that. But imagine going with my AWS example, if you had 10 past performances with AWS. So one of the things you can do to increase the number of people who are calling you back is obviously going to only be reaching out to the cloud people. Stick with my example here. And then you will be showing them that I got past performance doing cloud in your agency, in EPA, in HHS, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's spread across agencies, if it's in that one core competency. So past performances build the trust that people have in you. And if they see it in CPARs, or they see it in your email where you say, hey, we have 10 past performances, or that's in DSBS. The last one is content sharing on LinkedIn. So you want to build trust. You can share tips out there. Tips, like I said, about migration, top 10 tips on migration. Remember, when you're out there doing content, don't worry about sharing somebody else's content, because LinkedIn doesn't like that. It's basically just duplicating content everywhere. What you want to do is kind of find original content that you and your team can create. One easy example is look at your website. Do you have a blog? That's content you can put on LinkedIn, repurpose it. Do you have case studies? Put that out on your profile and then also share it as content, because those case studies would be really valuable to your customer and they would help build trust in you, going back to that whole visibility and then trust. And the last one is curate content. If you're not familiar with this term, you can curate content from a partner that you're working with. An example is, I said, AWS. So Amazon, you can see the content they're putting out and you share it with your own feedback in there. Or you write a post about what you think on that piece of content, and then you just point a link back to the original source. I've done this in IT, of course, because I'm in there, but I've also done this in construction. We got somebody in our community from elevators that we're talking about that same thing. Elevator companies, flooring companies, painting companies, they put out all sorts of content. You don't have to be the content writer today, but you get a little bit of borrowed credibility if you're sharing Otis Elevators top manufacturing tips of elevators or whatever. So hopefully that makes sense. If you understand what I'm talking about on how to build trust and these ways to build trust, build trust into the chat. We're cruising along. So in today's training, I talked about why no one's calling you back. And I hope you kind of understand it. What I'd like you to do, and here's my recommendation for you coming out of this training, right? Don't just come in here to get information, come in here to get action items to do. And so here's my recommendation for the rest of the afternoon. Ask yourself or ask your team these three questions. Are we visible to the buyer or to the people we're trying to reach? Are we targeting the right people? Are we doing outreach the right way? If you think you're visible, then the problem is with targeting and outreach. If you think that you're visible and you've got the right group of people you're reaching out to, then there's a really good likelihood that the challenge you're having right now, the bottleneck, is that maybe your outreach needs to be improved. But ask yourself, am I visible? Am I targeting the right people? And am I doing outreach the right way? If you found today's training helpful and valuable, do me a favor, put thanks in the chat. We always love seeing that. And remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.